All right, everyone, we start off today with new movements, of course, happening over in Israel and Palestine. Again, the region is getting more and more inflamed, and nobody really shows any signs of backing down, and so it's probably going to get worse. Iran has rattled its sabers after Israel, saying, if you invade Gaza, we're going to do something about it. What that exactly is more vacuous than usual. Not exactly the most pointed message. We will act. We'll do something. Well, what? Make a specific threat at least. Israel's being a little bit more specific, saying that if the Iranians get involved in any way, they're going to cut the head off the snake and pit bomb them, basically. Of course, they probably wouldn't go after Iran proper. They'd probably drag, Syria into it and, proxy it up in the general region, and it would be more of a localized Levant war. Egypt basically saying nothing, almost uncharacteristically silent about the whole affair except to defend themselves. As people were criticizing them, they didn't open up the crossing to allow aid through. And they said, no, well, we can't because the IDF bombed it, so it's not our fault. Leave us alone. Please, this time, can we be left out of it? If you're an Egyptian right now, you must be shitting bricks. And then you have Hezbollah. They're involved, so the region is becoming more and more inflamed by war. My problem is that the United States is currently posturing as though we're in basically the lead up to a hot war with Palestine, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, some people have pointed out, unlike with Ukraine, the United States does actually have a defense treaty with Israel. We are actual military allies in the agreed upon, signed on sense. So it's a little bit different. It's not like a state where you didn't have a treaty, you were on good terms and you trade and everything like that, but you don't actually have a piece of paper saying, hey, if you're attacked, we'll come to your aid. We didn't have that with Ukraine, we do with Israel. My question is this, though. Although the attack by Hamas weeks ago was much larger than normal, and although Hamas is a de facto governing body in Palestine, a de facto one because Palestine's not recognized as a state by the United States, would it not still be, and self-admittedly by the Biden admin, more of a non-state actor role than a state actor role? You see Biden referring to them as terrorists. Well, then they're not a state entity. It's a gang of terrorists. This is a non-state actor in the de facto sense. I'm wondering why, therefore, we've got several aircraft carriers in a region in which they could get hit at any given time, and causing a real fucking big diplomatic and strategic issue, by the way, because there are anti-ship missiles over in Syria that were delivered by the Russians, the S-300, I think they're called. I would think that if things get out of hand, we're basically sitting ducks. Now we're setting up an anti-missile system in the region for the U.S. ships. Basically, we're on a war posturing right now. We haven't declared war because we long ago decided, hey, the president should just be able to do whatever the fuck he wants, basically, as long as Congress appropriates money. No declaration of war is required. We're going to take that off the table. A lot of countries now do that. This has happened in the Eastern sphere as well. It's not a war. It's an intervention. We're not going to war with this nation. We're liberating them. We're just intervening. We're an interested party. But it's war. What we're preparing to do, you don't move that amount of material into an area unless you intend to potentially use it. The Israelis at any point could effectively ask us to run sorties or something like that. This could cause a big-ass war. Again, for a few short, brief, lovely years under Donald Trump, we didn't have this kind of issue. We had this issue. Can you remember the Obama administration? A lot of people's attention spans are rather short. And this is like the root of all evil with public policy, because people quickly forget about past abuses. Do you remember the Arab Spring? Do you remember how the United States was involving itself in about a half a dozen nations at the same time? Well, this could make that look like a goddamn Tea Party. It involves actors that are much more insane. And if you look at our policies at the time, I would argue that it didn't make a whole lot of sense. We attempted to overthrow the Egyptian government. They fell under the sword of Islamofascism for a couple of years. Thankfully, the military intervened and they restored order. So the Egyptians escaped from Obama's bullshit. Syria still has a civil war technically going on, although Assad has largely restored order. There's still guerrilla warfare going on there. Libya, meanwhile, collapsed. With Gaddafi gone, the tribal warlords cut the country into pieces. They don't have a development index anymore. It does not exist. You literally have open-air slave markets over there still, which was big in the news right after things went down there. Unfortunately, people have lost all concern for that particular region. Technically, you still have an intertribal war going on in Libya and have now for years thanks to Madam Hillary Clinton. This is the kind of foreign policy that all too many Americans effectively voted for when some of them actually did pull the lever for Joe Biden. They had an option. The man who is not starting wars, who is withdrawing us from multiple foreign theaters in order for us to focus on domestic issues, empowering ourselves in the process, making us more valuable to an ally in a time of need. If we have more wealth, more material, a beefier military, but we're not expending it constantly, we are stronger as a nation. That was choice number one. Choice number two was the VP who ruled under Obama, a notoriously warmongering administration. Oh wait, they're not really wars. When you overthrow a foreign country and cause it to collapse, it's not really a war. It's just an intervention. It's a diplomatic maneuver. I get tired of the linguistic bullshit that goes on. It's all psyops, by the way, to control your mind. And once you begin to understand you're being lied to constantly by propaganda, you'll see the world a little bit differently. Sometimes the people that seem nice are not so nice. Sometimes the peaceniks are actually fucking warmongers and they're just really good at labeling their intentions so that it fools people. Libya, Egypt, attempt in Tunisia a couple of years prior to that, sparking Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq. Name a nation. Right now, the U.S. Navy the other day was firing upon missiles that were being launched from Yemen. Well, Yemen is a long ways away from Israel now, isn't it? Supposedly they were headed to Tel Aviv or something like that. I don't know. I think that it was more they were attacking Saudi targets. So it looks like a regional war is building as well because the Saudi Arabians might end up getting involved. Well, the Houthi thing is basically tied at the hip with the Hezbollah thing over there. They're on both of our borders. Maybe it's time that we march in. Well, okay, there you go. I mean, march to Megiddo, I suppose, because it could lead to a nuclear situation if things go wrong. With the U.S. military assets sprinkled across the region, it looks more and more like we're already in a conflict. We haven't declared ourselves to be. Biden comes out and says, we stand with Israel. We're your friend and we're going to, help you out. But there's no declaration of war. There's not even a declaration of U.S. involvement in the conflict. But all of the posturing certainly points towards that. I mean, it walks like a duck, swims like a duck, quacks like a duck. When you cook it, it tastes like duck. It's probably a duck. It's probably not a midget in disguise wearing a feather suit. That appears to be what we have right now. The U.S. back at war again, after a lull of a few years in which people had infinite opportunity to choose to maintain that course. You have to deal with mean tweets, and you have to deal with occasionally Donald Trump saying something goofy, but you don't have a bunch of wars. The economy is not fucked up. We've passed that Rubicon a couple of years ago. You didn't have hyperinflation. Yeah, you have the Hong Kong medical problems going on that everyone has conveniently forgotten about entirely in the lead up to the election, but by and large, everything's going hunky-dory. It's like being in the early 80s again. For a brief period of time, we had that peace. That's why we need to re-elect Donald Trump. Hopefully, his diplomatic efforts will be fruitful and successful, where quite clearly Joe Biden's have been frenetic and insane. Biden has caused a lot of these problems. The ability of the Taliban to overrun Afghanistan was requisite upon pissing off all of the tribal forces that would have kept them in line. Half the people that marched to Kabul upon our withdrawal were not Taliban at all. And unfortunately, a lot of the public still blames Trump for the withdrawal as though the deal itself were the problem, even though everyone agreed it was time to leave. Yeah, you said that you wanted to leave. Like 90% of the public wanted to get out of Afghanistan. But unfortunately, people are too ignorant to understand the rudiments of Central Asian cultures and don't understand why it's a terrible idea to make a big deal and then go back on it unilaterally. People just can't be bothered to understand why that would be a problem. It's like they expect that we're doing diplomacy with the French or something like that. Okay, I know we agreed that April 1st I would come and visit you, but actually it's going to be June 1st. Okay, says Macron, that's perfectly fine. Do that in Afghanistan sometime. Go into a village, be like Lord Miles, go into an Afghan village, make an agreement of some sort, even a minor one. Hey, I'm going to give you a pallet of bricks tomorrow, and then don't go through with it and see what happens. That was Biden's fault. Biden is to blame for the reinflammation of the Levant region as well. It's because of the U.S. feckless foreign policy, because we don't right now even have a commander-in-chief. We have an unelected steward. That's about all. Peace out.